Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gavinsky's Tutorials. Today I'm looking at PaSSBot by Sinan Boksoy, so SonicLab. Now Sinan has done a bunch of apps for desktop. He's ported a few of these to iOS. So we already have Fundamental, which he developed along with Heinbach. I did a video on that. He also did Volbot, and I've also done a video on that. And PaSSBot is quite similar to Volbot. So in that Volbot video, I maybe looked at some things in more detail than I'm going to in this video today. So you might find it helpful to watch the Volbot video as well. Now, I'm going to go into this in a limited way today. It's fairly simple by the standards of Sinan's apps, but it's still quite complex. There's a lot of things to explain. I'm not going to go into tons of musical examples in this. In fact, it's going to be very, very minimal in terms of musical examples. Main reason is, everybody, this is something I haven't talked about yet on the channel, but I think I need to at this point say something. Unfortunately, maybe you've noticed that I've not been putting out quite as many videos recently as I normally do. Reason is, I've got serious problems with my eyes and other problems actually as well, but that is the main one at the moment that is seriously affecting my ability to make videos and to do any large amounts of screen time. I'm actually going for an eye surgery next week, and I'll have to get another one sometime in the next month or so, probably. So yes, you'll have to forgive me if this one is not full of examples, because I really am very limited in how much time I can spend on iOS stuff these days. Nevertheless, this video is going to be extremely useful for you, I am sure. Please do give it a thumbs up if it is useful for you. Now, let's look at PaSSBot. So PaSSBot basically is a filter bank. You have a bunch of different filter types you can choose. And what's the really cool thing is that you can apply very, very interesting modulations to these filters, and you can have up to 64 filters. And you can see that all the filters are sort of doing their own little things. So we've basically got individual modulations applied to the different filters. It can make some really cool sounds. Let's take a few examples, or take you through some presets first of all, and then I'll explain in more detail how the app works. We start off with some noise, for example. To browse presets, we press this. We see the default preset. We just have one filter here. I'm not going to tell you what exactly is being represented in this circle. I'll just say it contains the number, it shows you the number of filters, but it also shows you a lot of other things. So when you're watching me go through these presets, maybe you can just think to yourself, what exactly is this showing? It's very interesting, I think, to try and figure that out. I'll tell you later in the video. So, if you make incidental music or something for soundtracks, this is the kind of thing you might really enjoy. Love this. Now, by the way, remember that if you have noise like this, it can be very cool to then put that into a resonator. So I'm using Object, very brilliant and cheap as well app. So let's listen to a couple through that. Let's listen to that without the resonator. Pretty cool. There are no forward and backward buttons to navigate presets. It's a bit annoying. It's one of the things I'd like to see changed. You can see that this is not an interface that's designed for touchscreen. The interface is the weak point on iOS of these apps. But just want to mention, everybody, an app like this is quite niche. There's already a lot of work, I think, that goes into developing it for desktop. I do feel glad that these are being ported over to iOS, and I also understand that it would be a lot of work to do an interface completely from scratch. So I am kind of forgiving of this, even though I don't really like it. Like, there's a lot of wasted space over here, for example. When you open up the app, it'll open up kind of, small, and then you're going to have to sort of drag it around and move it around the screen to adjust it to see everything. But if you like these kind of sounds, well, what can you do? You put up with that. It's not ideal, but it is what it is, right? But I think it's important to mention, people should be aware of these things. Let's hear on something more drone-like. So here I've got Pipa, and I just played a bunch of notes into it. I did a video on this great vocal synth by Clave Grand. I'm going to keep the levels down not too high, because when I change around on this, if I go into something that has a lot of filters, for example, things can get a lot louder. See, we can adjust the number of filters. You can have up to 64 filters. So with certain filter types, when you start getting a lot, like let's say it's ladder, and let's say, or no, hang on. Let's say we go for notch. That can get quite loud if you have a lot of them. So it's the kind of app that it's wise to put a limiter there. I don't speak French, so I'm not sure the right pronunciation of her name, but you know that woman who did Trilogie La Mort or something like that? Eliane Radig, maybe, is the pronunciation. I'm not really sure. I mean, I think if you like that kind of thing, I mean, that's an album with 3 tracks. I think every track is about an hour long, and it's basically just drones with minimal movements. You like that kind of thing? I think you're really going to like this app. You can do a lot of cool, weird stuff with it. Let's look at let me find out an interesting preset for this sound, and something we can start with. Well, maybe we can start with this. Let's see. So, let's take a quick look at some things in the interface. I'm not going to go through everything, just a few things. So, one thing is we can actually tune, so we can quantize things to certain scales. We'll look at that a little bit later. There's also this manual trig. This is quite an important one, because if you press this, things will just turn off, and you might get a bit confused what's going on. So when you press this, then you need to trigger things manually. You do it by pressing this. And how long the envelope is set here. You can adjust this time. It's currently set to 5 seconds. So if I turn it off, it'll also take 5 seconds for the sound to disappear. And then here, this is a randomness thing, and this will be applied per filter. So that will bring a certain element of randomness into it. The thing is, with something like this, there's a lot of different random things going on already, so it can be quite hard to keep track of all the different random stuff. So anyway, that's what manual mode is. But let's turn manual mode off. We also have this stereo mode here that we can turn on or off. If it's on, then you can use a generator to play with the stereo. I'll talk more about generators later. I'm not going to look at everything, like I say, I'll look at some things. So we get different filter types. So when we change the filter, some things over here can also change. And obviously some of these are going to make very radical differences. State variable filter. I'll talk about this slider in a minute. So when we play with these ratios, when it's resonant like this, you know, if we get a lot of filters coming in at similar frequencies, we might get some kind of crazy clipping. So it's something that you've got to be a little bit careful with. You're okay because you're going to be listening to a compressed version of this. Nothing I do in this video is going to put your headphones at risk. We jump into another preset to show you some things. Okay, we start with something simple, right? So we got one filter here and we see that represented here. And we also see it here. So what we got here is determined by these. So when we press here, then this bar in the middle, that will be the filter frequency. Now that's being modulated a little bit. So if I turn this up, right, this is the range of the filter frequency modulation. This generator, which is down here, is also doing that. You can see how this movement here is related to this. Maybe you can notice that when this reaches its peak over here, when it gets to the furthest point, that's also when this gets to the furthest point. But we can limit the range here with this slider. If you look here, you can see that here we've got low frequency and it goes anti-clockwise up to high frequency, 20k. Now let me see. Generator 1, okay. Generator 2. So let's look what generator 2 is doing. So these generators are basically like kind of fancy LFOs. Do you see how this has got thicker here? So BW is bandwidth. So this is increasing the bandwidth of the filter. So earlier it wasn't that noticeable because of the way it was set up down in the generator here. I'll talk about that in a minute. If I take that off, then now it's just staying thin. Now here, filter gain. Okay, let's assign a generator to that. Again, these generators are basically just kind of like fancy LFOs. So here you see we've got full range of filter gain modulation. These will also depend on the way these are set up, but yeah. So you see, if we're giving it full range for filter gain, it means that it can get very, very quiet and it can get very, very loud. It's got that whole range. So you can see here now, it's staying to a stable range of gain. Now what we can also do is we can use this slider to influence things. So for example, let me put up this filter frequency modulation. So you can see it's getting quite a lot of range here, right? Well, if I press F here, now this will define the upper and lower limit for the frequency. So you see here now it's being kept to low frequencies only. It's very low, right? That's pretty cool. If I put this up here and then bring this lower limit up, then now it's only doing high frequencies. So this can be a cool thing to play with if you want to do more kind of filter sweep type things. So when we press F, this will adjust the upper and lower limit for frequency. This is the upper and lower limit for gain. So let's say I never want it to get too quiet. Then I pull this up. And now it's never going to be allowed to have a very low gain value. And then here, this one is for resonance. Let's get another one. So if we look here, generator 1 is related to this filter frequency modulation. So let's see what happens when we play with generator 1. So you can see here, generator 1's movements are being visualized. So you can see here that this is set to triangle. Okay, this is a sine type modulation. So here we've got basically more traditional types of things that you see more in more commonly in LFOs and things. But if we get in here, then we're seeing these very different types of random modulations. And sometimes when you do these, you'll see that nothing appears here. Then you've got to play around with these sliders. And then you'll start to get things happening. Binomial is not the most interesting one to play around with. That's basically just going between 0 and 1, I think. So, you know, some of these are pretty weird. Let's increase the number of filters. So let me put 10 filters, for example. So you see now here we see 10 lines, right? So these are going to do different things. Let's just go back to a simple one just to show you. Oh, that's cool. So this is the rate. Ah, this is very cool. Very cool for weird experimental stuff. But if you're not trying to do just weird experimental stuff, you might have to spend some time with this before you really, you know, can use it predictably. So you see, scale is like an amount, basically, and we can have negative or positive values. So you see this is like line 0, and then this is going over. You know, this is basically going to just determine whether it's going from a high value to a low value with each modulation or vice versa. So if we have high scale and high rate, we can get pretty crazy stuff. And then you can use the smooth to sort of smooth things out. That's pretty cool. Now let's see here. Okay, so see here, what is that? It's being adjusted. Let me press F. So right, oh yeah, that's the frequency, right? So you can see here, and I can show you the frequency. Now, very important thing, very important, we have two different models. So if we choose harmonic, there's going to be a relationship between these. Let's turn off this. So, like for example, a ratio of 2 is going to put octave between the spread of the filters. I'm not very good at explaining this. If we turn off harmonic, then these, here I'm just adjusting one particular filter's frequency. Here I'm adjusting another filter's frequency. G, this is the gain. So you can adjust the gain, the frequency, and the Q, okay, the resonance for each filter individually. So you've got a lot of control. So some things we do here, we might get some, when you're getting different filters making dramatic changes very quickly, you might get some distortions and things like that, so you need to proceed with caution. So let's say this bandwidth, at the moment nothing's assigned to it, so let's assign a generator to that. Let's just do generator 2, for example. And then let's look at generator 2 and let's see what's going on. So you can see here that the scale looks pretty low, so we can turn that up. Now we're going to get something more dramatic. So you're going to see more thickening here of these, right? Because we're dealing with bandwidth, and bandwidth is represented by thickness. So again, if we're doing these very radical changes in bandwidth, we might get some clicky sounds, and then we can use the smoothness, you see, to smooth that out. So the smoothness control is very useful. So let's assign, say, generator 3 to the gain modulation. So you can see that gain is represented by the distance that it travels from the center of the circle to the edges. So if the filter is represented just down here, then that means it's very quiet. If it's coming up here, then it's very loud. So again, we can click on G here, and then we can bring everything down very quiet. Or we can move this and we have everything limited to a pretty loud range. Here we can bring in some randomness, and that can get quite gritty sounding. So I haven't found myself using that one very much. Certainly nice sounding filters, huh? Let's turn the rate down maybe, and you might see things a little bit more clearly. Do you see if I turn this off, these are moving very smoothly. That's because they're not quantized to a scale. Now they're jumping because they're being quantized to a scale. Let's increase their range. See, it didn't increase much because this slider was down, right? So you see, this is the thing with Sinan's apps. Because you're dealing with randomness and because you've got different ways of controlling things, these apps you really need to spend a bit of time with before you get them. They make a lot of sense once you do. Like everything, it's only difficult until you understand it, and when you understand it, it's actually fairly simple. But with something like this, it's never that simple because there's just so much randomness involved. But what's helping you always is that there's great visualization. I mean, I love how things are visualized in the circle. I love how the function generators here. Again, you can see everything very clearly what's going on. You see the smooth button can make a big difference. Okay, here we've got a dry and wet knob. Let's try this with the manual. Let me put it up wet. It's pretty cool. Let's hear what this is like with more. Let's try 30. Oh, no, sorry, 3. I do wish there was a slider here or something. Let's try a harmonic. So again, remember, this is being quantized as well. You can set a generator to this as well. Or not. So is there anything that I haven't really gone into yet that I still want to go into here? I personally never really use the preset menu here to save my own presets. I prefer to save them in the host. So I think this is a good point to talk about things I like and don't like about the app. Let's just bring this down. So basically, I mean, I really like that it's got these different filter types. I love how you can have up to 64 filters. I really like the ability to quantize to a particular scale. I love how things are represented in this circle. It's very interesting and it's very enjoyable, I think, when you're playing around with this kind of music, to have that visual representation there. You know, just again to summarize, gain represented by the distance from the center, bandwidth represented by the width of the filters, number of filters represented here clearly in the number of different objects that we see, and then frequency modulation represented by the way they move around, and frequencies represented by where they are here, with high frequencies here all the way around anti-clockwise going down, low frequencies here going anti-clockwise round to here where we have the highest frequencies. I like this thing here so we can have a lot of real, chaotic stuff going on, but then we can basically use this to quickly do filter sweeps. I like the way we can adjust the frequency, gain, and resonance for each of the filters, and that way we can see them here, and at any time as we're adjusting one thing, like for example when I'm adjusting frequency, I can still, maybe not in this one so clearly, but I can still see the other two parameters represented by smaller lines there. Maybe a little bit clearer in this one. And then these things are interesting. I mean, I personally often find myself using the more traditional ones, but I do sometimes use the others as well. So I like how we can get, just crazy individual modulations per filter. I mean, remember that, like, look at this sine wave. Each filter is being modulated separately, making that shape, but each filter is doing slightly different things. So it's very, very interesting from that point of view. What do I not like? Well, I'd really, really dislike the way the preset menus work in these. I'd refer you to the manual if you want. I just don't even remember exactly how to do it because I never use the inbuilt preset menus. It's not a big problem for me because I always use AUM, so I just save them in AUM. As you can see, I haven't saved any. I've literally just got this app yesterday. What else? I mean, I wish there was a forward and backwards button for scrolling through presets. It's one of the things that I hate most about a lot of synths, that they don't have that. It's not a synth, but whatever, a lot of apps. I always just think there should be a forward and backwards button, especially for people like me when you're doing a demo video. You just want something you can just quickly scroll from one preset to the next. And then the other main gripe that I have is the way that it opens when you open a fresh instance. That we don't see the whole thing, and then when we click on it, we still don't see the whole thing. Instead, we have this space over here, and here we have to all drag around to resize it. The bottom's still cut off in that, so we need to pull it up here at the top and then drag it down again. But as I said at the beginning, this is something that I'm willing to forgive because I understand that these are ported from desktop, and I'm glad that we have them on iOS. I know it would be a lot of work to completely redo the interfaces, but definitely let's not kid ourselves that these are ideal touchscreen interfaces. They're not. For example, you shouldn't really have to type a filter number here. You should be able to drag. Another thing is that, I mean, the slider you see, I'm using a mouse, right? Because I want to show you what I'm doing. But when I'm using my fingers, I often have problems. For example, now I'm touching the screen. I'm trying to move that slider and it's not moving. Like I need to come in a bit further than I would expect. So you can learn to do that, but then the danger is that, you see, just now I wasn't trying to move this slider. I was trying to move this. I was trying to move this one, and I'm still moving that one accidentally. So this is something I mentioned in previous videos. I really dislike that. But it's not a huge problem for me with this one because personally this slider I don't use a lot. But you will find people commenting that they like using these apps with the pencil. It's certainly not necessary to use the pencil with these. Most stuff works fine by finger, it really does. But this continues to be a problematic area in these apps. And there's been a problem with all of the SonicLab apps that have been ported to iOS. As I say, using a mouse on this, no problem whatsoever. But you can basically see very clearly that, you know, this was designed as a desktop app to be used with a mouse, not to be used with fingers, because, I mean, I don't even have big fingers, but I still have problems getting that accurately every time. I might get used to it eventually, but I do still find myself making mistakes or just not getting any reaction when I'm trying to move something. Like right now, I'm trying to move that slider. It's just not moving. So this, I'm not happy with that aspect. But definitely a creative app, something that you might, you know, if you just like experimenting with stuff and playing around, I mean, you're going to have tons of fun with this. If you want to just, you know, quickly dial in a filter on something, this is not going to be your first choice. It's not designed to be that, you know. There are plenty of other apps doing that kind of thing. This is for the experimentalists, the sound designers, and so on. Anyway, I definitely enjoy it, and yeah, looking forward to doing more drone type stuff with it. As I said at the beginning of the video, don't forget how cool it can be to use noise, and then to put a resonator on it. Then you can come up with some really cool blown sounds. That can be fun. Alright everyone, if you're still here, congratulations, you've made it to the end of a YouTube video. That means you still have good attention span that has not been destroyed by social media, YouTube, short YouTube videos, and all that kind of thing. So well done, well done. And please don't forget, if you have made it this far, you've obviously found the video interesting, helpful, etc. So please give it a thumbs up. As always, everyone, really appreciate PayPal donations and things like that. So yeah, thank you to all the people who have donated already. I hugely appreciate it. I really, really do. It honestly, I feel very moved when I get a PayPal donation from someone. All right, everyone, thank you, and see you in the next video. Take it easy.